Antes de comenzar este episodio, quiero invitarte a conocer una nueva plataforma en la que en DLC estamos participando. Se llama mexicopuede.mx. Es una iniciativa desarrollada por empresarios mexicanos dirigida a ayudar a negocios y empresas mexicanas de todo tamaño y giro a salir adelante durante la crisis que estamos enfrentando a través de dar acceso a más de 20 plataformas y más de 100 talleres de capacitación y entrenamiento en línea en los que distintos empresarios, líderes y reconocidos especialistas de distintas áreas comparten su experiencia y consejos prácticos y tácticos para mejorar tus procesos de ventas, tus estrategias de marketing, impulsar la transformación digital de tu negocio y desarrollar y aprovechar el talento de tus colaboradores al máximo. Todo esto accesible en un solo lugar en línea y sin costo alguno para ti o tu negocio. mexicopuede.mx es posible gracias a las cámaras, consejos y asociaciones de negocios y empresas que invitan y comparten esta iniciativa entre su comunidad de afiliados. Si quieres conocer más y aprovechar todos los beneficios que esta plataforma ofrece, visita ya mexicopuede.mx.
And as years went on, nobody read my blog for like 8 years. I mean, it was awful. It took me 8 years to get my first 100 readers. And when people hear that, they're like, what? And I was like, well, no one knew there were blogs for a while. So that's one reason, but also very bad. But when I started getting attention, which was maybe around towards like 2005, I realized, oh my goodness, this is such a better way to talk business. This is such a more personal way.
Bienvenidos a EntreMentorES DLC. Yo soy Efraín Mendicuti y he creado este espacio para conversar con distintos líderes de pensamiento, negocios, educación y cultura en todo el mundo sobre su trayectoria, sus lecciones y sus mejores prácticas y compartir con todos nosotros su pensamiento, estrategias y recomendaciones para hacer en nuestras vidas de lo cotidiano algo extraordinario. Esto es EntreMentorES DLC. Consultor en marketing, ventas y content marketing, increíble conferenciante y entrenador en temas tan importantes como liderazgo, estrategia, marketing, social media y creación de contenidos. Es autor de 9, sí, escucharon bien, 9 New York Times bestsellers y es un grande entre los grandes que ha colaborado con personalidades y queridos amigos tan importantes como Mitch Joel o Tony Robbins. Pero además, quienes tenemos el gusto de conocerle, sabemos que ante todo es un ser humano amable y generoso. Como él mismo se dice, a real nice guy. Acompáñenme a aprender del CEO de Chris Brogan Media, el extraordinario Chris Brogan. Chris, my friend, I'm really happy and really honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure. And everybody listening, there's no way I could speak Spanish nearly as well as you would need me to. And my 25 bad Spanish words would be just good to laugh at. That's about all you'd get. So I apologize ahead of time that you only get my bad English.
That's great. Can you believe it's been over 10 years since we last saw each other?
In that 10 years, my friend, is the anniversary of my book, Trust Agents, which just turned 10, in August of 2019. And so I very specifically can believe how crazy that's been. But my time with you was amazing because what I felt was this is a worldwide change that you and I were experiencing. And how often is that? It's never, right? Like the world learned about these tools and that they could do something for their people where they were. And I think that's the best and most exciting thing still is that we connect, right?
Absolutely. Actually, I was going to tell you precisely that. When we met, you had just launched. It was your second book, I think, back then, no? And now
I think so, yeah.
And now you're writing number 10, right?
10 is on the go. So yeah,
it's amazing.
Crazy times to me.
So
yeah.
So and you were saying this, there's so many changes. And back then, like 10 years ago, we sat down, we recorded a video interview, and we were discussing all the changes that had happened up until that point. But those changes that we discussed, and it's a great video, by the way, but those changes that we discussed back then pale in comparison to everything that's been going on in the last 12 months, or in the last 24 months. And I know that you have been very, very busy since then. And you've been part of the folks that have been leading that change as well. Like, you've been in the front lines as well. What changes have really surprised you or blown your mind in the last 24 months?
Total, everything. I think that, okay, look, let's say the obvious thing here. I live in the United States. This has not been a good 4 years in the United States. This has not been a good time. And, there's, as you know, in Mexico, there's been better and worse times, right? And so this is not our finest 4 years. And I think that what is interesting about that is that some people don't want to talk the politics, but everyone wants to have a sense of what is true and what matters and what can I see for myself. So if you could only watch state-sponsored media, everything's great, everybody's healthy, everything's fine. We're seeing that in Brazil too, right? Brazil, everything's fine. I don't have COVID. Yes, you do. It's because we all have video studios, audio studios in our hand. This piece of black glass is now the world's television studio. And so it means that you and we have new responsibilities, and it means that we have new opportunities to connect. And even if you didn't want to talk politics, even if you only want to talk music or food, you can say, I only want to talk to people who love Oaxacan cuisine, not Mexican food the way we talk in America, right? But just Oaxaca, right? You can find people who are passionate about only that. And I think that that's still beautiful, but it's also so important now, muy importante, that we communicate and connect with our friends and share the story that we think is real, not just what the story is being pushed around us.
And boy, there are so many stories that have been, are being pushed. It's crazy. It's like everybody kind of owns their own narrative, and it's been tough. Now, one of the things that you've been working on lately, and this is something that really caught my interest, is precisely the work that you're doing on helping companies and leaders own their narrative, and help their teams own their narrative. And I believe you call it story leading.
Yes.
Right?
I launched something called Story Leader at the very beginning of the year. And it's the first time I ever tried to apply for a trademark for something, which means, that it's my brand and no one can take it. You could take everything else I ever invented, I guess, not my books, but meaning that meant so much to me that I put effort into making sure people knew that it was important. It was an important product. So what that means, though, to anyone else is that leadership has changed. And look, Mexico is built on stories, right? Mm-hmm. Stories are how everyone's abuela told us what happened before. And before even written word, your abuela's abuela, the great people, they only spoke spoken word stories. Well, business runs on story, right? You never just say, don't go to this place. You say, let me tell you a story. My brother took his car there, and it was worse when he left than when he got there, and they were very rude. And let me tell you that they said that this problem was there when it came in, but I know it wasn't, and you tell the whole story. And that's how we buy. That's how we think. If you have an employee and the employee keeps leaving at 2 p.m, you say, look, the day ends at 4 or whatever the day ends, right? But if they're leaving at 2, you say, look, let me tell you why that's important, because then I have to stay. Then my daughter doesn't see my face before bed. And if I have to stay and my daughter can't see me, this impacts your job now. You know what I mean? So it's to me a way to show the importance, even though we've been saying for years that story is important. I really hard to demonstrate why that is true. What does that mean? How do we use these things to talk about the mission of our company, to talk about who we think belongs? Like, not everything we sell is for everyone, right?
Right,
So
absolutely.
how do we say that, maybe if you're a young person, this might not be the right thing for you. This is for people who want to go a little slower. Let's say we sell scooters. Scooters are cool for some people, and they mean something different from somebody else. It could be just a working person scooter as opposed to like a tourist scooter, right? And so you need to make sure the story matches that. And, you're going to just be fine. Everything is fine because this is not made to be fun. It's made to be reliable, whatever the story, right?
Right. What I like about the example that you were sharing about the employee leaving at 2 p.m. is that usually when companies, and we both having working on marketing for, I don't know, for many years already. And when companies think about storytelling and narratives and owning their narratives, they typically think about it from the marketing perspective, what the story that they're selling to their customers.
Right.
And they often forget, or we often forget, about the story that we have to tell our teammates, the people who belong in our organization, and share with them the reason why we're doing what we're doing, right? That's
absolutely
so important.
And it's I saw an example. This is me stealing because every good writer steals. And I saw this example from HP, Hewlett Packard, South America, from years ago. And my friend at the time, Dave Gray, he had this company called Explain, like I'm going to explain to you, but it was the letter X and then plane like an airplane. So I loved his brand. It was a great name. Dave said what would happen was people on the assembly line would slow down. I'll take a little time in between my job and the next guy, because the next guy, it's fine. He'll fix it. But what happened is, let's pretend there were 20 people on that assembly line to make one computer. 20 people touched it. What was happening was 8 of the 20 people were slowing down and saying, well, it's just me, right? Like everybody else, it's fine. It'll get done. It'll be faster. And what they could show was that in just one computer, you lost maybe 9 computers worth of efficiency. You lost 11 computers. And nobody was saying like, whoosh, whoosh, work like a slave. They were saying, you pausing to have 2 sips of coffee and then starting again, each computer, maybe that's bad. And so I think those stories for leadership, especially now, right? We're quarantined. What do? Our employees now maybe have to be in other buildings, other places. How do we teach culture? How do we teach the rules? How do we teach how I want you to treat my customer? It's okay to just say, go ahead, just call them? Like, what if that's a 10 million peso customer and the person who calls them has no telephone skill? You lose everything to that one person, not on my life. So
absolutely.
There's work. Right?
Absolutely. Hey, you just mentioned Dave, and so you have so many incredible friends in the authors and thought leadership landscape. And I mentioned in the intro, you've worked with Tony Robbins. I mentioned Mitch. Actually, I remember when you came down to Mexico City to do a keynote at the IAV Connect conference. We did a video conference with you, with Mitch, and with Joe Jaffe.
That's right.
At the same time, and that was really fun. And so you've been collaborating with all these many wonderful people. Julian, of course, your co-author in a few of the books.
Yes.
And I believe business partner as well in some enterprises. So some of the brightest minds. Who would you say are 1 or 2 people who have really blown you way, like the way that they think and their work ethic and what they do, that you have adopted and integrated some of the learnings and teachings that they share with you, and you've integrated them into your life.
I want to answer that in a strange way, if it's okay. And the reason I want to say that is because when you hear those names, especially when you think of guys like Tony Robbins, there's no reason Tony Robbins should know me. What he did was he asked somebody, hey, who's doing interesting things on the internet? I'm going to do a whole show, a whole series of his DVDs about internet people. And someone said, get Chris Brogan. He's good. And so Tony's people called my people, except Tony's people called me because I don't have people. And they said, can you fly and hang out with Tony? And I said, yes. And that's how that happened. And we sat at his house because some mistakes happened. We were just going to meet at this place, and he couldn't be there. And so skip a few things. I'm at his house and we're hanging out. So you would think that's crazy, right? Like, the average listener to your show is like, no one just goes to Tony Robbins' house. But I did. Met the family, he has people who work for him, and they like made lunch while we talked and all that. If Tony came to my house, I'd be making lunch while we talk, but that's how that goes. But all those other people like Mitch and all those people, they're very important, but they're also just people. And what I learned from 2006 when I started using Twitter, and what I learned from 1998 when I started blogging, is if you reach out to somebody anybody, and you say, I'm so interested in your work, and you talk about their work back to them, that shows that you didn't read just today's blog post, right. But that you're a student of their work. That's how you connect with those people. That's how you meet these people. There's a comedian I wanted to interview, and he just tells jokes and things, and he's not super famous, but he's a comedian. He's a professional entertainer. And I messaged him on Twitter and I said, I loved your Comedy Central video. I love the way you told the story. I would love to interview you for Story Leader.
Of course.
Sure. He says, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. He doesn't know me. He all he sees is that some people follow me on Twitter. That's it. Right. But we don't, most of the people, you don't have to be someone fancy or somebody important. You just have to be someone working, someone participating, someone doing something. That difference between I'm a fan and I'm doing something is the most exciting thing in the world to me. If you say to me, Chris, I want you to meet this guy or nice lady, and she markets food trucks down here in Mexico. Food trucks were not a thing. Now they're a thing, and I need you to meet this lady. I would love it. I would love to meet that person more than another conversation with Tony Robbins. Because, you asked me the question, who am I looking up to? Always the street, always the new person, always the for lack of any place, like from the favelas, from the barrio, from all of the place right. That's where you have to work to live. Right. My grandmother and my grandfather worked in factories, and that's how they made their money. And they didn't start with why. They worked a stupid job so we could eat stupid food. That's why we did it, So you pay the stupid rent, there was no magic. So I feel like you show me a guy with a fancy watch next to his rented just for the day McLaren car, and I'll show you someone who can't teach me a thing. You show me, your uncle who learned how he could turn a hubcap into 5 hubcaps and then make a business empire. I want to sit at that guy's knees. I want to listen to him. And the digital version of that is just our friends who make a video show or make a podcast or do a thing. And that's who I want to learn from.
I agree so much with you, and I think that's very powerful. And one of the things that I keep discussing and with friends and colleagues is that you do not have to be Mahatma Gandhi to make a difference in the world. You don't have to be You don't have to be very famous to be able to do something. You just have to work. You just have to put your mind and heart and hands to work on something, and that will make a difference. Maybe just for a couple of people, that's fine. No, and one concept that I love from, and I think it's Seth who keeps sharing this, is, similar to the minimum viable product, it's your minimum viable audience. Just learn who you're serving, and if you're serving 10 people, 100 people, and then you can learn from that and be able to serve 1,000 and then 100,000, why not? That's fine, but learn who your audience is, and you don't have to go out and meet millions from the start. You just have to start working. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
No, my pleasure. And I will say this too. Remember, as we record this, I don't know how evergreen you need this to be, but we're recording this in the quarantine, right? As things are still bad. My friends who were all professional speakers lost almost all their revenue or all their revenue because there are no conferences, there are no corporate speaking. There's none of that. It's all gone. So my friends who decided that was their only business, was a microphone and a big slide and whatever, they're all wonderful. They're all out of work. They're all unemployed. And so who's going to work now, right? You and I like entrepreneurship. We think not how do I get on a stage? How do I help someone make some money? And I'll take a little money. They'll make the money. I'll take some money, right? That's who wins. I had a man come here to my place, and I hired him for cleaning because he's from Argentina. I was trying to think where. He was South American. He was from Argentina, and he and his wife were corporate cleaners. And I said, well, I'm not corporate, but my house is this is one big room inside like a factory building. It's a loft. I said, so it's not normal. Like, it's not like 2 bedrooms. There's one big room and the toilet room, the baño, that's it. And I said, can you come? And he goes, yeah, I'd love to. He quotes the price. It's a price I want to pay. And he helps me clean. And he's looking around and he sees that I have IKEA boxes against the wall that I have not assembled. And he says, hey, do you need those assembled? I said, oh, I would love that. Are you good with that? He goes, I'm great with that. I said, when do you want to? He goes, can I do it right now? Yes. And he put together my IKEA boxes, and I don't remember what he charged, like $100 or something. And then he's looking around. He says, hey, do you need some of this trash removed? Because I see you you have a little collection started of things that look like they need to go to the dumpster. I said, yes, $100. He got like 900 of my dollars that one day, and he would have got more, except I had already signed to pay to have the place painted, because that was painting. And if he had asked me 2 days earlier, he would have got all that money too. And I did not feel bad. I felt great because he fixed all these problems. He made almost $1,000. And you know what he tells me after? He says, you know what's crazy? He goes, my friends come to the US from Argentina and they ask me to borrow money. Everybody knows I have money. I said, why would you borrow money? You just go do what I just did. You want to assemble some stuff? Want to paint? Want to clean?
Right.
You do it, right? You know who did that? Our grandparents did that. You know who thinks they're too good for that? Everybody our age and younger, right?
Yeah.
You and I, we like work, so that's who we're going to work with and for. I don't have to be fancy. I have to have money.
What I love about those examples and those stories is that it shows that you don't need a fancy title and an MBA to know about upselling and servicing people. And it's because that's what you're doing. You're serving people. You are helping out. You are actually creating something of value, not necessarily just pushing something that you think it's valuable, but you're actually doing it. And then you charge for it, and you deserve to be well paid for that because you're doing something for someone else, and that's great. And you don't need to have an MBA to be aware that you can upsell because you're delivering more or doing more for someone else. So I love those stories, and I think I agree with you. I think that we're living in an age of entitlement, and what the quarantine is showing us is precisely it's kind of shining a light into, those folks that feel way too entitled. The people who, are going out and not really necessarily following the recommendations and just feeling that they can do whatever because they have the right to be sick. No, and, I think that's showing who's feeling way more entitled than how they should be, conducting themselves.
You're right. And I think too that there are lessons we think we're learning and there's lessons we think we're teaching. And sometimes it's hard because, for instance, when you and it makes us sound so very old now, there's white in my beard. So I guess I'm old.
Yeah, me too.
And I think about, can you imagine telling your mom and dad that you were going to be play video games for a living? And they would beat you, and then they would ask you, who gave you that beer? And, that would be how that ends, right?
Absolutely.
And so the starting salary for a professional video gamer, like a competitive gamer, starting salary, $80,000 starting.
That's
so, in Mexico too, by the way,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying, right? 80,000 US goes a little further in Mexico. So that doesn't count the YouTube entertaining types of people with their videos. Ninja from Fortnite made like $30 million in 1 year recently. And people were like, whoa, that's stupid. He just plays a game. He works really hard. He produces every day. He creates and edits all kinds of content. He pays editors, but he works on his deals. He works to negotiate experiences and product experience. He negotiates events. I mean, all that stuff. So, just because you see someone on YouTube and you think that they make more than president of a bank, that's not exactly true. And it doesn't mean that the work is not hard. It's just different hard. Our uncles can be mad that we don't have enough calluses, but our brains are very calloused. So it's like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The landscape and the industries have changed, but what has not changed is the concept of work ethic and working hard and really focusing on doing what matters. And that's really important. Now, thinking about that and thinking about your career, because you have a very interesting story. You started in, if I remember correctly, and I'm trying to push my brain into going back 10 years ago to that last conversation. And if I remember correctly, you started in customer service on CRM and telemarketing, right?
At the telephone company. So, the Ma Bell, up this way. But I don't think I worked with any Mexican companies, but I worked with South American companies before. The big main phone company, like the primary phone company in the US, that was my first professional job, not counting like, when you're a kid and you work like at a grocery store or like a bookstore or a video store. My first grown-up job was telephone customer service. And basically, if you called and you wanted your phone installed, if something didn't work, like if the installation did not work, you'd call me angry. Oh, it was supposed to work. Nothing works. You're bad people. Why did I pay you all this money? And I'd say, oh, I love you. I'm so sorry. Let me make love to you right now. And they'd say, yes, I love you too. And then we fix everything, right? And that was the job. And I did that. I did repair service, which is now the phone has worked for some time, but now it's broken. There's a hurricane and the tree knocked it over. And I'm so sorry. Let me get that running for you. I'll send the truck out. It'll be tomorrow by 5 p.m. That's too late, okay, So I did that for many years. And then I went and worked at wireless telecom, with mobile phones. And I was a vendor at that point. So I wasn't the big company. I was the vendor talking to the big companies. And so my whole my whole professional career was telephone in some way or another. And I left one day to join the circus to start running events and talking about all the stupid things like blogging and tweeting and stupid words. And that's how I make my money now, is talking to really big companies about why they need to make video shows and things.
What got you started on blogging?
So I started blogging in 1998 when it was still called journaling. Nobody was doing it. It was stupid. And what I liked was, so I lived in the capital city in Maine, in the U.S. in the Upper East Corner. Maine is where all the good lobsters come from. I'll fight you because I know Mexico has lobster, but Maine has amazing lobster.
If I were from California, I would fight you, but I'm from Mexico City, so that's fine.
It's fine. They're all imported for you in the city anyway. So the Maine lobster. So up there, when I was growing up, there were only 3 conversations you could have with your friends outside, right? You'd be outdoors with all the kids that you knew because there was no internet, right? They were all right there. Your social network had all punched you at some time or taken your money or whatever. And the only 3 conversations were Van Halen or Led Zeppelin. So I said, okay, Van Halen. They said Mustang or Camaro. I said Camaro. Will the Red Sox ever win the World Series? I said no, which is a bad answer because I'm in Maine, which is near Boston. So that's bad. You know, it's like voting against Mexico City in like FIFA or something. Like it's a bad thing. So which by the way, there I am in the Plaza Garibaldi, and my 2 people that took me around were Eduardo and Raul, and they take me to a bar and they say, "Do you like football?" And I said, "No, I'm American. Like we hate football." And it was I think Mexico City versus I think like Buenos Aires or something like that.
Like Argentina, yeah.
And and it was the most exciting game I had ever watched. Maybe partly a little tequila related, but also I'm in Mexico watching Mexico play, and it came to a shootout. And so I'm yelling like I'm from Mexico. And they said, "I thought you didn't like football." I said, "Well, today I do." So anyway, that's my Mexico City.
I remember that day, and I had, Bianca was like, "Do you know where crazy is?" like, "You went to Garibaldi."
Yeah. Turns out maybe I shouldn't have gone to Garibaldi. It was
it was good. It was good. Good for you.
It was fine. But so those were my 3 conversations. So what got me interested in blogging in that was that I always wanted to reach out to people who wanted to talk about very important things. Like, could Superman beat up the Hulk? Is Spider-Man better than Batman? Is Captain Kirk better than Luke Skywalker? Those are important business questions that need to be answered. And so when I got onto learning how to blog, it was because I could talk about what I wanted to whoever could find it. And as I started thinking about it more, and as years went on, nobody read my blog for like 8 years. I mean, it was awful. It took me 8 years to get my first 100 readers. And when people hear that, they're like, "What?" And I was like, well, no one knew there were blogs for a while. So that's one reason, but also very bad. But when I started getting attention, which was maybe around towards like 2005, I realized, oh my goodness, this is such a better way to talk business. This is such a more personal way. This is such a way that however narrow I want to be about one specific thing. I talked about Oaxacan cuisine, right? If I only wanted to talk about pork tacos, someone out there wants me to start a pork taco blog, and someone out there would love to talk on that pork taco blog about why I'm wrong, right? And that's the beauty of what we can do, is we can talk exactly about the thing we like.
Absolutely. Going back to that minimum viable audience. I guess from the look at your bookcase behind you, the answer to whether Batman or Spider-Man is better, that's it. It's Batman.
It's the Batman.
Absolutely. And if you were to ask me about Kirk and Luke Skywalker, I would say definitely Star Wars.
Oh, it's got to be Star Wars. And what's fun about that is that in there we learn, like how people love football so much, right? If someone loves football, they know everyone's best kick and best save. Yeah. And they know which game mattered the most, or which game was completely illegal, but no one can talk about it because, it was official. And whatever we love, we can now talk to anyone in the world about what we love,
Absolutely.
And this girl I was with for like 10 years after my divorce, her family, she was Puerto Rican and Brazilian, and her dad was straight from Brazil. Her mom was raised in New York City. He brought he would copy Brazilian TV onto VHS tapes and sell that to Brazilians all over New York. You know how that stuff works.
Wow.
Telenovelas, the Brazilian
Right.
version of telenovelas, all that. And he was making a lot of money, not quite legally, which allowed him to open the first ever Brazilian nightclub in New York. So
wow.
that entrepreneurship, that sort of feeling of your people around you kind of feeling, I think with the internet, we could do that anywhere now, right? I mean, and I think we want that. We all want to get away from where we live, but then we miss home so much that we need home to go with us. Mm-hmm. So I think there's so many opportunities.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just a matter of finding how you can serve others and put that to work. Now, with all of the, all the things that you've done over the years, all the ups and downs in your career, if Doc Brown were to show at your door with his DeLorean, to when in time would you travel? At what point in time would you travel? And what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself?
They say there's an expression we hear all the time that youth is wasted on the young. Mm-hmm. So that's a dangerous question, because I think if 50-year-old Chris Brogan goes and talks to 20-year-old Chris Brogan, 20-year-old Chris Brogan says, "Shut up, old man," and I wouldn't listen, right? Like I didn't finish my degree at university because I was so mad that the things they were teaching me were so old. They were so ancient. And I was like, why do I need to know? I'll give you an example. So technology wasn't exactly as much as we're talking tech, the tech is the paintbrush. I'm talking about the art, right? So right. I'm at this school and they're teaching me how to put a floppy disk drive. How old is that sentence? We should probably go to the nursing home right now. How to put a floppy disk in a floppy drive and how to mount that disk so that the computer can see it. In the middle of that, my work calls me, and our data storage array stopped talking to our server farm. What I was doing was mounting a room full of disks to a room full of computers on my cell phone in the back of the room. Type this. Okay, now type this. Type this. And then the teacher called me up to the front and said, "Get out, and I'll just give you the A because you can't come back to this class. That's stupid." And all I thought was, I know it's stupid. You know it's stupid, but I just paid money because you're going to give me a certificate that says I know how to do the thing I do. So Doc Brown could tell me, "Get the degree, you stupid idiot," but get it in something like, journalism or law, where like the parts don't change much, right? Law is law. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And if a new law comes, it's like getting a new record album. You put the new law on and you read the little notes and remember the lyrics, and then you're, good. I like that one too, right? I learned that I'm a stupid person when it comes to learning, because I need to learn by trying and failing so many times. And it would have saved everybody time and money if I just got some of that done in school.
Yeah, that's good. That's I kind of feel represented there. One of the discussions that I've had in the past with some colleagues is that I am not a big fan of MBAs. I think that they are amazing and at accelerating knowledge, but that does not equal in any way to experience. So you might be fresh out of college, going to an MBA and accelerate your learning process, from 20 years of experience and kind of boxed it in 2 years. But that doesn't mean that you get the emotional intelligence and maturity that you need to actually process and use that knowledge. So you can know it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to put it. You can you're able to put it into practice.
This is a terrible analogy. And I know this is a business show and a family show, but it's like reading a lot of books about sex versus having a lot of sex. You know, if you know how to kiss someone so that they sing very loudly, that's way better than reading about doing it. Because like you say, with an MBA, they know a body of knowledge that you don't necessarily know, but only in their head. You know, they haven't put it in their hands. They haven't executed it and been told by a customer, I know what you're doing. I read that book, right? Exactly. And that's the worst feeling. When you feel like you know what's going on and your customer says, oh, you stupid boy, that's the worst feeling on the planet because you didn't have the experience yet. And the only thing you could hope at that moment, you hope you're lucky that that person is willing to be your teacher and not just your tormentor, not your bully.
Hola amigos, solo para contarles que este episodio es presentado por Ricolto Café, una empresa 100% mexicana que desde hace 20 años ha llevado la experiencia del mejor café de México a miles de oficinas en este país. Hoy, Ricolto Café llega también hasta nuestros hogares. Pueden conocerlo mejor y hacer sus pedidos de cosecha especial de Veracruz, mi favorito, o de Chiapas también, en grano o molido en ricoltocafé.com. Eso es Ricolto con K. Utilicen el código #DLC320 al hacer sus pedidos en línea y reciban 10% de descuento en su próxima compra. Visiten entonces ricoltocafé.com y lleven el mejor café de México hasta su hogar. Absolutely. So thinking about that and going back, on what we've studied in the past and on all the advice that we've gotten in the past, what's the worst piece of advice that you've listened to in the past? Like, that advice that you just, repent yourself and say, like, what was I thinking when I listened to this person tell me this and I went and did it?
I think this is a good question, but I'm a bad person to ask because I don't do very well with advice. The only advice that I follow are from people that I've seen bleed, for their business. Okay. If I've seen them hurt, take the punch or whatever, right? Like whichever analogy we use, then I know they know. And if someone comes up and says, you know what you should do? Like I turn off the tape recorder right then. I smile politely. Oh, thank you. I'll tell you one reason why. So my parents are the most loving people in the world. My parents were employees all the way up until they quit doing what they did. My mom was a few months away from retiring and the phone company let her go so that they wouldn't give her the proper pension. But she was an employee her whole life. And even when she was management, she was an employee her whole life. And so when I said to them, I'm going to start my own company, they said, oh, no. You should be an employee somewhere. I said, Mom, you just got let go. They just showed you why you wouldn't want to be an employee. And so if I had taken her advice, I would still be some boy working at a phone company somewhere. And I'd be making 3% more than what I made 10 years ago. And what I learned in my experience is that fail a lot, say lo siento so much you might as well get a tattoo that says lo siento, because you're going to need it. And I think just deliver. It's amazing the difference between someone who thinks they're amazing and someone who is amazing is somebody who delivers. Your very gross fish sandwich is better than I don't have a sandwich when I'm hungry, right?
Absolutely. Love that. I completely agree with you. Now, before we move on and to the last questions, and we're going into the end of the show, sure. But I want to talk about habits and routines. Now, why I want to do this, I hold the premise, and I discuss this with all our guests in the show. I hold the premise that for someone to be as productive as you have to kind of build and integrate a certain amount of habits and establish certain routines that allow you to do everything that you do on your day-to-day. So over the years, what are the habits and routines that Chris has developed and that help you today be as productive as you are?
Two questions in your show that I'm the worst person to ask. Well, can I say something that I learned in person when I went to Mexico City? I learned that there's something called Mexico time, and it's lot like India time, by the way.
You learned about the legend of ahorita. Yes. When anyone tells you ahorita, like it's instead of ahora, which means now, they tell you ahorita, which means
soonish.
Could be now, could be later, could be never.
Mostly never. Yeah. So, by the way, in Arabic, Muslim people, they have this phrase that I always loved called inshallah. Inshallah means literally as God wills. You know, if God says this is good, this is what's going to happen. I did not know. I treated it very reverent, like something you hear from a church. Mm-hmm. I learned from my people who are Muslim that it's just like ahorita. It is basically, you know, hey, are you coming to my house tomorrow for that party? Well, you know, inshallah, I'll be right there. You know, inshallah means, you know, if God wants it to be, that's what's going to be. What it really means is no way. I'm not going.
well, right? You know, the translation would be primero Dios. If in Spanish, it would be primero Dios. Like, yeah. If that's God wishes, that's fine.
God wishes. Yeah. And you have people that you know when they say that means absolutely no.
Absolutely.
Just, you know, hey, mom, can I get this new album that came out? That's when mom says no. Yeah, exactly. Parents learn how to say no 1,000 ways that aren't really no. Okay, so I am not very habit driven. I am not very productive. I schedule my days to 40%, period. Mm-hmm. And, you know, 40% is 3 something hours out of the 8 or so. And the reason I schedule just 3 hours, I don't only work 3 hours. I've been working all day, but I schedule 3 because I want to make sure that I have time to deliver on what I said I was doing. That if I have a client that gets very mad, it doesn't upset 8 other clients, right? So it's important for me to have that extra space. And it's important to embrace sort of that ahorita kind of mindset of, you know, I'll get to it, as long as, and this is the most important thing, as long as you can continuously communicate, you know, yes, we can totally do the podcast. Yes, next week sounds good. Yes, Thursday sounds good. Yes. I mean, let's say maybe between 3 and 6, can we be flexible? Mm-hmm. Yes, we can. Okay. You know, and that's how you land it. Whereas if it's not flexible, if it's inflexible, things break more. If it must be real time, like this interview, you say no more, right? Because real time becomes the most important time. When I can look you in the face and see mm-hmm. your handsome face, that's much more of value than answering your email. So someone asked me to do a quick piece of work for them. It wasn't for money. They just wanted a favor. I said, yeah, sure. Yeah. And I could do it anytime. So I woke up so early this morning for no reason. You know, you just, I guess I'm awake. And so I did his thing right then. And then I'm off to do whatever else I want to do until I'm needed somewhere. Mm-hmm. I think that the more you can make your life like that, the more you can make your work not be time bound, which again, I felt that the most in my life in Mexico City. I went, oh my gosh, these people, good and bad, by the way, you know, I felt like you were there, like you work to live. You don't live to work. Do you know? Mm-hmm. And I feel like our grandparents and all the factory workers and the street workers and all that, who had to be somewhere on a specific time and who had to work, you know, they only got paid for the hours that they worked or whatever. I think they learned a terrible lesson as far as how time is money. And so when you ask that question, I'm so sorry the answer is so long, but when you ask that question, what I think is I've spent my entire professional career trying to help people be who they need to be at some distance, but also how to uncouple real time from other time so that we can use it better to make our business work around our family, around our life, and around whatever we think is the most important thing to us.
Love that. And I think it's good. It's like just scheduling like 40% of your time or less. That's a great routine, by the way. Anyway,
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. So before we move on to the last question, because I want to be very mindful of your time, where can folks listening to us follow you or contact you?
So I'll tell you my preference. You can find me anywhere. Like I'm on Twitter, YouTube, I guess a little bit Facebook, but my website, chrisbrogan.com, get the newsletter. And the reason I say that is I think my newsletter is the thing I work my hardest on every week. It's my best thing. And that every Sunday the letter comes out. And here's the part I want you to think about. You can just hit reply and I'll talk to you, and what I like about my newsletter is it's not like I know these things. It's more like, I think this will be good. And you can reply and you can say, well, I didn't ever do that. Here's how I did it. And I learn, right? And I always reply. And so anyone can communicate. And by the way, especially my friends who speak way better Spanish than I can speak, Google Translate is fine. We can still be friends. So chrisbrogan.com.
Perfect. Amazing. So, Chris, my friend, the whole premise of this podcast is not only to learn about your trajectory and your experience and your thoughts, but also to learn from different leaders like yourself, how you turn the day-to-day, the daily stuff into something extraordinary. So how does Chris Brogan turns the day-to-day stuff into something extraordinary?
I think the best way I can answer that is with another culture. So in Africa, the Zulu tribes, when they say hello, they say sawubona. And that means I see you. I see you. And what they say back is nighona, which is I am here, which isn't as interesting to me, but I think if we see people every day, that's the best way to make the biggest extraordinary difference, right? Because maybe, like you said, I can feel myself in that. I feel represented in that answer is what you said. And I thought, well, then I've done my job here, because when you feel you and when you feel that validation or that kind of permission, like I'm the magic fairy and I give you permission, I want to every day make sure people feel they have permission to do it their way. Because so many people think they don't, that no one gave them the permission, that no one gave them the chance, or they're waiting for something. And if I could help more people realize their value, I always say this thing, and I mean it every day. The world needs what you know. Do you know what I mean? Like that religious song for Christmas time, The Little Drummer Boy. And it's all about this little kid who just plays drums because he's poor, right? And the whole song is basically like, I don't want to go meet a king. What am I going to give a king? I just have a stupid drum. Well, that song tells you something really cool. It says that there's these three guys and they have gold. Well, babies don't like gold. What's a baby going to do with gold? And then frankincense and myrrh, those are like spices. No baby wants a spice, but a drum? Every baby loves a drum. So that kid had the best gift. And so what that story says is, you humble person, you've got something someone needs. And that's the big long answer to that answer.
I love hearing that. Love it. That's a great example. I've never thought about that song that way. Thank you. It's really, really cool. Chris, I really want to thank you. Really appreciate your time. It's great catching up. I hope we get to do this soon again. And you know what? One day, let's try and record something with Mitch and Joe as well. And Phil. Or with Phil. That would be also very fun. He's also great.
Any bunch of them. I'll take anybody you like. Let's grab them.
That's great. Thank you very much, my friend, for your time, for sharing all these nuggets of knowledge and also passion, because you're a very passionate person. And again, and I'm going to say this in Spanish,
please.
Tienen que conocer a Chris, tienen que escucharlo, tienen que leer sus libros, tienen que leer, suscríbanse a su mailing list y conozcan más sobre él porque tiene muchísimo que enseñar. Thank you, Chris, again for your generosity today. It's been really great to catch up. Before we say goodbye, I just want to thank you again and acknowledge you for the amazing work that you've done over the years. Very inspiring work. You've certainly inspired myself to do this kind of work as well. So thank you very much for that. And I look forward to just keep learning from you in the future. And we'll see you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Y muchas gracias también a todos ustedes por escucharnos en este episodio de Entre Mentores DLC. Recuerden suscribirse y compartir este y todos los episodios de Entre Mentores DLC, porque estoy seguro que entre sus amigos, familiares y colegas hay por lo menos una persona que se puede beneficiar muchísimo de las historias y consejos que grandes mentores como nuestros invitados el día de hoy tienen que compartir. Muchas gracias también a Ricolto Café, el mejor café de México, por acompañarme en esta aventura de vida todos los días. Yo soy Efraín Mendicuti y esto es Entre Mentores DLC. Hasta la próxima.
Great. Well, as you're a big Star Wars fan, I'll tell you one of my favorite Spanish phrases to throw at people. Que los monos estén contigo. May the monkeys be with you.
Que los monos estén contigo, amigo.
All right, my friend.
Hey,
talk soon.
Thank you. Take care. See you soon.